Hello and welcome back to our study of Peninei Halacha, the teachings of Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, Shlita. We begin a new week of learning as we get closer and closer to Chag Chanukah, and we're learning the history of Chanukah and the events leading up to the story of Chanukah and even after. In the meantime, please continue davening for Chaylei Tzvagan Yisrael, for Shlem L'chol Petzuei Yisrael, and a safe return of our hostages. And we dedicate our learning to Nishmat, Sarah, Daniel, Shimon, Rav Duran, Vasheli, Shemikim Damo. The next chapter is one that deals with perhaps not the most glorious chapter, but perhaps division within the house of Hasmonean. So after the war against the Greek Hellenists was concluded with a resounding military victory from the Hasmonean, they still had to fight the cultural war. There was still the tremendous Hellenistic influence, and he calls it the ocean of the tremendous, strong ocean of Hellenistic influence that swept over all of the culture in the surroundings. And this was a very powerful culture. His strategy atzva'it mitzuyenes, sidrei hamishtar ye'elim, the methods of science, military, government, they were all advanced, efficient, and they were all to be envied. The sculptures and the architectural designs, they were extremely impressive. And of course, the thrill of all the sporting events is where we have the Olympics, let's say. But all these things are very captivating, something that people hadn't seen before. And just because they won a military victory doesn't mean that they wanted to do away with these exciting new innovations. And that's why this influence, this Syrian Hellenist, the Greek Hellenist influence, there's a little Assyrian in there also, when there used to be Assyria, but I digress. But this was so strong, the influence all over the recognizable world. Even after hundreds of years, once Rome takes over and Rome becomes the power in the world, even though the Romans controlled the world militarily, but the Greek influence and the Greek culture still dominated. And even though we were able to defeat the Yevanim through our military revolt, but still, it didn't stop the entirety of Hellenist influence. And thereafter, tens of years, the Hellenist influence already developed deep roots amongst the wealthy and amongst Jews who found themselves intermingling with other nations of the world. And the Hellenists, then, they became known as the Tzedukim, or we call them the Sadducees. So the Sadducees, the Tzedukim, they believed in only the written Torah without the oral tradition. And they felt that it was still able to be possible to have loyalty to the written Torah together with this Greek culture, and they had it into some of this. This was their Jewish identity that it became. So this is the part of the Chanukah story that they don't tell you when you're in third grade, and that is that one of the saddest episodes or the saddest commentaries of history is that the direct descendants, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren of Matisyahu, the hero of the Chanukah story, who has 5 sons, and they defeated the Yevanim, they defeated the enemy, but nevertheless, their descendants of those, again, the descendants of those who gave over their lives to fight against this scourge of Hellenism, they themselves, their descendants, became Hellenists, and they went against the Torah way, against the Chachmei Yisrael, against those who upheld the tradition. Nino shel Matasyahu Yanai HaMelech. Matasyahu's grandson is King Yanai, that even though he served as a Kohen Gadol, but he also was a known Hellenist. From a national point of view, he fought to expand the borders of Israel. But from a religious point of view, from a traditional point of view, he was known as a Tzeduki, as a Sadducee, and he fought with traditional Judaism and the leaders of traditional Judaism. Lebasof, Avdei Hasmonean, Uvrasham Hurdus, Govra al Bnei Mishpachas Hasmonean. In the end, it was the servants, those who served under the Hasmonean, and the head of them, his name was Herod. We could look at the Gemara in Bava Basra, discusses the story of Herod and his rise to power. They ultimately took over the family of Hasmonean. Hichrisu es zaram mochel mekamam. They completely eradicated their offspring, and they ruled in their place. That the Gemara has a very, very strong statement that says, it's Gemara in Bava Basra Daf Gimel, Kol ha'omer b'beis Hasmonean o shehu eved o shehu ramai. Anyone who claims to be from the house of Hasmonean is either a slave or he's lying and he's deceiving you. Very, very long note here as well, giving some more historical context. It's worth reading. It's note 4 in this chapter. Al pize'ef shel havinas bikarosim shel chachmei sol abeis Hasmonean. So we can understand that the Chachamim had negative things to say about the Hasmonean house because, first of all, they took over the kingship, and the kingship, as based on the pasuk in Vayechi, is only supposed to come from the tribe of Yehuda. And he quotes here, if you're looking for some Torah to learn over Chanukah, I highly recommend, as he points out here, the Ramban in Parshas Vayechi on this pasuk Lo Yasser Shevim Yehuda, which the Ramban also rails against the Hasmonean because they took over. After all, they were Kohanim, so Kohanim were from the tribe of Levi, not from the tribe of Yehuda. So B'tchila Nikruman Higebeis Hasmonean Nesiim. At first, those who were leading the Hasmonean were called Nesiim, like presidents. But after they crowned themselves as kings. B'nosaf L'kach Hem not only Atzmam as Tafkida Kohen Gadol. Not only did they assume the kingship, but they also took over to being the Kohen Gadol. Ulam isukam misidrei hashilton v'techvav pakaba v'adasam kohanim gadolim, and of course their involvement in politics and in rulership, it affected their ability to serve as a Kohen Gadol. V'kach avodas hakodesh tzricha haisa lehasos v'gedusha v'tahara nifkaba, and this holy service, which was meant to be done with sanctity and purity, was then defamed and it was defiled. V'ashbas ha-Hellenism gavra, and of course the Hellenistic influence overtook it. Mineged, on the other hand, even from a national, from a Medina point of view, it also was incomplete. That even politically, they were lacking because they still were under the rule of many stronger nations around them, and they often were held under the influence of other nations. So even this weakness in the political realm, it affects the kingdom of Judea, and of course how Hellenism was able to overcome. So we'll see more of this as we go on, but again, as I mentioned, this is a part of the story they don't usually tell you, but it's important for us to understand the full story of Chanukah, leading up to the events and also after the events. And it'll also have you wonder, why is it that we celebrate it as a holiday, but it's something that's worth investigating. But thank you so much for listening. But please continue davening for Chal Yitzhak and Israel, for Shlem L'chol B'tzu'ei Yisrael. Safe return of our hostages, learning Leil Nishmat, Sarah and Daniel Shemin, Avdor Michelle, Shemin Damo. Looking forward to another great week ahead. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you here next time. Have a great day.